Next up, I want to start off with our Fireside series. We're going to have 3 Fireside chats, and we're going to kick things off by talking about what it means to grow your protocol. There's been a lot of things that we've seen in the space launch, grow, become big, introduce new ideas, and we're going to go into the inside story of kind of how some of these things grew to where they are now, and things that worked for them and things that didn't, and how they chose to focus on different things. So the first Fireside chat that we have is going to be Matthias from ZKsync. He's the head of growth, and we are going to cover a lot of what they have seen since they've launched and how they're focusing on getting more people to be in the space. So please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kartik. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. So a lot of people have heard of ZKsync, but what I want to start off with is ask you, how do you tell others about what ZKsync is, and what have you been up to over the last year?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think a lot of it comes down to the audience, and thankfully this audience already knows what Ethereum is for the most part, so that usually speeds up the explanation. But ultimately, ZKsync is a layer 2 for scaling Ethereum with the goal of reaching mass adoption. Our emphasis is on the ZK, which is zero-knowledge technology, which is not necessarily a new form of cryptography, but being able to apply it and use it for applications, for projects that you're building is novel. And what it really affords is that, traditionally rollups have been optimistic, which, requires some kind of a social consensus or trust, and zero knowledge relies on mathematics. Again, historically, it's been a little bit too expensive to use at scale, but in the last year or so, we've seen a massive decrease in costs, not just for zero knowledge, but across all of Ethereum L2s, which is helping us power some really interesting real-world usage of Ethereum at scale.
Nice. Are there any stats you can share about what's been out there, and how do you kind of measure your growth?
Yeah, a lot of the growth comes in a few different ways, but we've been shifting how we look at public metrics. It's very easy to get caught up in battles of TVL and TPS and all these traditional metrics, but really what we're looking for is what we would consider quality metrics. So quality builders, quality wallets, and those get a bit more nuanced and detailed, and maybe difficult to find the exact metric.
Subjective land there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of subjective angles there, but I think, again, the key here is that there's some public-facing metrics that are extremely important, but some are vanity. And so what we're really trying to decipher is what is the actual usage underneath. But when you're looking at metrics like transactions per second, we have some of the highest, if not the highest, tested publicly for L2s, let alone ZK L2s. And then same thing when you're looking at like active wallets, active addresses. We're well north of 500,000, so it puts us in the ranks of top 5 in activity. So even with these more maybe vanity-focused metrics, we're still seeing a lot of really exciting growth, especially coming out of launch, where for better or worse, a lot of people will activate on a chain, wait for launch, and disappear. So we're kind of in the shakeout of that launch, and we're still seeing a lot of really strong positive growth.
That's awesome. You have a big focus on LatAm, and the thing I want to kind of understand is, why is that region important to you, and what made you have a dedicated focus on that market?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that answer comes twofold. One part is my personal story, and the other part is the opportunity. And so for my personal story, my family's originally from Argentina. My parents were both from there. My dad actually had to flee in the 70s due to a military coup. So it was very intense. They had to, get away from Argentina, go to Venezuela, which at the time was a haven. Now, bizarrely, people are fleeing Venezuela to go to Argentina. But I guess from there, they went to the US in search of working in technology, et cetera. And then, I've been working in tech my whole life. I grew up in Minnesota, actually. Made it out west to work in startups. And through that journey, now working in blockchain, there was this opportunity to work with Argentina once again. So it's kind of this full circle of my family having to leave, getting to the US, going into tech, and now back to Argentina, which is, for my personal story, very, fulfilling, full circle. But on the, technology and the area of opportunity, when you look at the usage in Latin America, it is very different from the rest of the world. And one of the main areas I'm comparing to is, for instance, Europe, Western Europe predominantly, and the United States. A lot of usage, and there's a lot of charts that show this, but is kind of tied to the price of Bitcoin. More people start using crypto when Bitcoin goes up. When the Bitcoin price goes down, less people use it. What you're seeing in Latin America is this departure, where Bitcoin's price can go up or down, but the usage is steadily scaling north. And a big reason for this is economic factors, mistrust in institutions, government, financial institutions, but also just a need for these people to interact with different assets. For instance, Argentina, where we spend a lot of time, there's a limitation from the government to only be able to buy 200 USD every month. Right, and so
per person in the country.
Yeah. So if you're in a country where you have 200% of your inflation, you can only get 200 USD per month from your salary. You're subjected to a lot of downward pressure from the market. So crypto's offered a haven, especially stablecoins, for a lot of people to find ways to shelter and hedge against inflation, but also then opens the doors to other crypto usage, finding ways to earn yield, finding ways to invest in stocks, finding ways to do things that maybe aren't fully enabled in a region. It's not that these things are illegal by any means, it's just that it's a different mechanism that allows them to access this technology.
Mostly curious about this. Are people actually spending Bitcoin directly, which means they're open to transaction fee losses there, or is it spending Bitcoin through other facilitated means, but they're not getting into the actual downside of a lot of transaction costs?
Yeah, good question. From the reports from like Chainalysis, for instance, which has really incredible global and regional growth reports, you're seeing that a massive percentage of usage in these countries is stablecoins. So a lot of that, the major predominant usage is USDT, historically has the lowest fees. And so again, people are just using it as a daily means. So they're transferring peer-to-peer or doing remittances from country to country. And so that's kind of a lot of this adoption that you're seeing. And again, this is more day-to-day usage. I have this, sometimes when I'll do a presentation off slides where I'll do the day in the life of a power user in Argentina, there could be 15 touch points in one day. Maybe that's a really active day, but it's not an exaggeration that over a given month, someone will interact with all these 15 different mechanisms, whether it's sending cryptocurrency peer-to-peer, or maybe using something like a Lemon Cash where you can convert your paycheck from pesos to US dollar digitally, and then use a credit card to spend per transaction. So you're seeing a lot of very, just distinct usage patterns than what you see in the United States. And now you're seeing a lot more acceptance of crypto at different point of sale. It's not fully a Bitcoin region where you land in Argentina and you're going to be able to spend Bitcoin everywhere. But you are starting to see a lot more adoption of stablecoins specifically, and that's opening the door into some of these other currencies to be used.
That's awesome. And maybe, I do want to go a bit deeper into this, but maybe this is something I also don't know. What exactly is kind of what are some stats on the user base right now, like in terms of the people there? Is this millions of people who are actively doing this thing? Is it growing? Is it a young group that is kind of emerging? How do you kind of quantify how big this is?
Great question. Yeah, statistics from both Lemon Report and Chainalysis show about 40 million people across Latin America. So in total, there's 650 million citizens. So it's still a fairly decent percentage.
Still more than Canada.
Still more than Canada. And if you do look at some of the nuanced data, for instance, again, I'm spending a lot of emphasis on Argentina because it's where we're seeing a lot of opportunity, and it's sort of becoming the crypto capital. That's its aim at the moment. 4 out of 10 people that open a crypto app anywhere in Latin America are doing so from Argentina. So you're seeing a lot of adoption across the different countries. There's predominantly most adoption in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and Venezuela. A range of different factors. They all have their different perspectives, but some of the similarities are around inflation or potentially remittances. You kind of see those as some of the 2 main factors that are driving this sort of day-to-day adoption. But again, it is pervasive, but it's not that you land and now it's a crypto land. There's still hubs of it. You see more of it in Buenos Aires than you would see in the provinces. In Venezuela, you're starting to see a lot of usage, especially for remittances and transfers. So again, different ways to track this behavior, but it's been top of the charts for Chainalysis report for the last 3-4 years now, and LatAm keeps growing and growing in market share when you look at global adoption.
Wow. So as somebody thinks about building anywhere from a consumer app to even a service for merchants for Argentina, what are their odds of being successful if they're not local? And do you think about different first mover advantages? Do you care about the context matter, or is it purely about utility and the value of the service you're getting?
No, I think that's a really great question. I think with any regionally focused technology, it always pays dividends to have locals helping build that solution. Now, does the entire team need to be from a specific region? Not necessarily, but you will intimately understand a problem more deeply if you've actually lived with it. I think that's fair with any technology, but you do see people who have no experience in a region or in a market go and build something successful. I think when thinking about first mover, though, it is a ripe opportunity for people to build really valuable technology. We just had a pop-up city, Aleph, part of this Crecimiento movement, where we spent an entire month with over 2,000 people, founders, builders, hackers, devs. The thing that amazed me there is that there was a lot of volatility in the market. We were there for 30 days with all people that know crypto. There was barely ever any mention of price. Everyone was there focused on building and building.
Pretty good metric.
Pretty good metric, and building real, can I say it? Real shit. They're building real shit, and it's actually valuable because, I mean, a lot of time, we've all been in this space, whether you've been here 6 months or 6 years or longer, we're all hoping and waiting for blockchain to really solve problems. And so far, we've created more problems, and we've done a lot of casino activity, and we've done some really cool stuff too, don't get me wrong, but it just feels like what we had promised and what we set our eyes on 5 years ago, we're not that much closer to really rebuilding everything on blockchain. Now, technology's cheaper, there's more pervasive connections, it's safer, it's getting safer every day, it's still a lot of exploits, but for us to really, for me to feel fulfilled in this market, in this world that we're spending a lot of effort, a lot of weekends, a lot of nights, a lot of travel to be a part of, you do want to see these things that are adding value and helping people. And so I think that's one thing that I really, not only I noticed, but our entire executive team, CEO, president, everyone came down to Argentina, was there for a week, meeting with founders, meeting with builders, talking to them, and they were blown away. They go to conferences all over the world and blown away by these people solving real problems. And so, if we have any takeaway of what's going on there, is they're actually finding ways to use this to help.
And that's the best version of a technology actually becoming built into a day-to-day behavior of any person. Maybe just to clarify, when we're talking about all these things just now, is it mostly just payments? Like, are we just purely talking about paying for things, and if I want to buy something from a store or send money to somebody, or does it extend more than just peer-to-peer payments?
Great question. I think payments is, the main use case of blockchain. It's you take value, you're able to transfer it. It's simple, it's direct, it's understandable, and plus we all use money basically every day, so it's very easy on-ramp. But no, I would say we actually have a lot of really interesting use cases that are in flight, coming up in the region, that are maybe either have little or nothing to do with payments. And some examples. We're working very closely with the government of Buenos Aires. We've been working with them for over a year on helping them launch a self-sovereign digital identity. This is the first government in the world to release a fully decentralized, ZK-backed, self-sovereign ID. What that means is governments today, they own your data. They all have it. They choose not to let you use it unless they maybe give you this government-issued card that they can track when you use. And so the government of Buenos Aires is saying, we understand the benefits of zero-knowledge technology, of blockchain, of decentralization. The ethos of our citizens is aligned with this technology, which is self-sovereignty, distrust in the government itself. And so they've been building and are issuing credentials to citizens so that they can use their driver's license, marriage certificates, birth certificates, in any way they choose without oversight from the government. They obtain these credentials, own them on their device so they can interact with digital services more safely and securely. They never pass any PII because all they're really doing is showing a proof, and it's a zero-knowledge proof. The info is hosted somewhere securely and encrypted, so all that's public on-chain is an indecipherable string of numbers. Wow. And so they're giving more security, more scalability of their infrastructure at a lower cost to their citizens, and this is happening right now. It's actually, there's some really big announcements coming next week, so I'll have you all keep your eyes open, but we're very, very excited about the work that's been going on there, and also very happy that a government is willing to relinquish control. Most digital identities that you see are absolutely tracking every single action that a constituent is doing, which is, often by design. So to see a government take the opposite approach and more or less relinquish control is really exciting.
What's been the reaction from the locals there on using it and actually getting others to use the identity as proof?
Yeah, so most of them don't even know it's on blockchain. It's not actually an important feature to my great uncle. He just needs to go do his government task. And it's much easier now because it doesn't have to go to an office, do it from his home. Maybe he has to call his nephew to make sure he scanned the QR code right, click the button, but it's very simple flow. And so for the grand majority of the population, they just have new features in their government account, and they have these accesses now. For those that are a bit more savvy, and they want to understand how is this possible, why is this better, they're able to understand that it's zero-knowledge technology. And we get a lot of really positive reaction from the crypto community, both locally in Argentina, but also globally, to see that, wow, a government's actually using blockchain and using it in a way that is novel from a global perspective and also completely non-financial. So again, we're having this really impactful use case that's going to reach millions of users that has zero financial motivation or incentives. The motivation for the government is actually just cheaper and easier and faster for them to issue. It increases or expands the safety they already have. And then for citizens, today they get to do all their tasks much more simply.
Convenience. Yeah.
It's convenience. And then there will be more things added on. For instance, in the future, now you can prove someone is from a country. You can prove that is the person behind the device. And you can prove that they have a certain citizenship. Now that's really compelling for a government because, okay, now I can give you maybe voting rights because I know it's you and I've checked all the boxes I need cryptographically, and then you could have audited votes. On the other side, if you're a private enterprise, I can prove that the person that's coming to this app or event is an actual human and not a bot or someone from another part of the world, so I can give them an added benefit for interacting.
That's a pretty good world I want to live in. That's awesome. I do want to tie this back to kind of ZKsync here. So we kind of talked about what the opportunity is. You talked about one of the identity projects that are coming out, but what has it meant to actually get this off the ground and growing this, and kind of where does ZKsync come into this mix, and how do you kind of think about supporting that region?
Yeah, I think it's been extremely compelling for us as an organization to see the value and impact of builders in LatAm, but also globally. Right? My focus is more in LatAm, so that's why we're honing in. But to be able to see people building real technology that wasn't possible before is super exciting on the one hand. On the other side, you know, the big vision for ZKsync is actually what we call the elastic chain. It is this kind of chain of chains, shared liquidity, seamless interop, which makes it so that applications can deploy on ZKsync Era, the L2 that's public, and then at some point when they graduate, maybe they reach a certain level of transactions or users and they want to have their own hosted chain, they can spin out and be completely interoperable with everything that they've had before. So the elastic chain vision gives you this kind of future state where more aligned with the app chain thesis, where you can have all of these independent chains that are fine-tuned for their specific use case. A bank might want something in a Validium mode for more privacy, or even this, this Quark ID digital identity to be GDPR compliant, you need to have your own chain so you can have a request for deletion, and things that aren't standard in public blockchains. And so that vision of growing, almost treating our main L2 as an accelerator and launchpad to be able to launch your own chain is super compelling and really does open up a lot of really interesting use cases when you see how, an ID chain can interact with a gaming chain, can interact with a banking chain, can interact with et cetera, et cetera.
But in terms of kind of strategies that have worked on getting people excited about it, whether it's people building on top or users using those products, like what kind of have you noticed that works, what doesn't work, and what are kind of some actionable advice that we can give to the audience on this? Yeah,
no, that's great. I think it boils down into a couple of sides. One, as much as we all care about the tech, and we know that the tech matters and is important, no one really cares about the tech, right? And it's an unfortunate truth that your tech can be superior in XYZ ways, but ultimately it's also about what are people able to create, build, and get to market with. And so, from being successful in growing a layer 2, it is also about how do you actually get mind share, how do you get developers excited about building, for them to build something that adds value, and then that's going to entice other people to continue to build. So again, it's all about the builders, it's all about them creating meaningful technology and us supporting them, whether it's from dev resources or other ways that you can help projects get off the ground. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if your TPS is slightly better or if your implementation or how your sequencer functions is, superior. It really is about what are other people also doing in your network, and what do I get as a benefit for a builder joining in to that party, right? If all of these L2s for now are somewhat fragmented from each other, I want to be where the most hype is happening. And so that's a continuous challenge. We're now kind of in this governance era where everything is now decentralized and people are able to vote on proposals, and this makes it more exciting for the community to also decide the incentive programs that they want to be a part of, that they want to build for. And so I think now it's really a big phase of how do you activate community, How does that community ensure that developers have a super strong mindshare and voice in shaping the future of the protocol, and then making sure that they're building for true end users, right? We all have this promise of the next billion users on chain, but we need to actually get them there. And I think that's where we're putting in a lot of efforts of how do we really go mainstream with technology? How do we help the builders that are on our chain from day zero get the maximum benefit of that?
Awesome. I think that's a really good point to kind of stop, and it's a really good takeaway. So I want to thank you for taking the time and sharing us the insights of all what you've done to get people to use more crypto in LatAm. So thank you so much. Please give Matthias a massive round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.